Hello and welcome to our program. My name is Mark Kligman. I am the interim director of the Yunus and Soraya Nazarian Center for Israel Studies. The Nazarian Center is situated in UCLA's International Institute. Our center provides academic discourse that addresses Israel's history and culture, both past and present. Today's program is the second in a three-part series in collaboration with Tel Aviv University's Alliance Center for Iranian Studies. Today's program is co-sponsored by the Center for Middle East Development. Our moderator for today's talk, who will introduce our speaker, is Steve Zipperstein. He is an assistant adjunct professor with the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs. He teaches for the Global Studies Interdepartmental Program within the UCLA International Institute and for the Henry Shmueli School of Engineering and Applied Science. He has been a distinguished senior fellow at the Center for Middle East Development for the past 5 years and is also a visiting professor at the Tel Aviv University Law School and the Hertie School in Berlin. Zipperstein is the author of several books. His most recent book is The Legal Case for Palestine, a Critical Assessment. Please join me in welcoming Steve Zipperstein.
Thank you so much, Mark, for the very kind introduction. Thank you to all of our audience for joining us today. It's my great honor to introduce our speaker, Dr. Liora Hendelman-Baavur. She's a senior research fellow at the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University, where she was also the director from 2019 to 2023. Her specialty is modern Iranian history, Iranian popular culture, media, gender, and youth studies. Dr. Hendelman-Baavur received her PhD from Tel Aviv University, where she's also a lecturer at the School of History in the Department of Middle East and African History. Her book, Creating the Modern Iranian Woman, Popular Culture Between Two Revolutions, was published by Cambridge University Press 6 years ago and received the Latifeh Yarshater Book Award from the Association for Iranian Studies in 2022. She's the author of many scholarly articles. I won't read the titles of all of them, but one that's particularly relevant to her talk today is entitled Online Anti-Semitic Propaganda and Negationism in the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ahmadinejad and His Enduring Legacy. She's also currently in the final stages of a manuscript about the former family, the royal family of the Shah, the Pahlavi royal family of Iran. And beyond her research, Dr. Hendelman-Baavur has organized international conferences on the Middle East. She serves as a respected voice on Iranian affairs and culture in both academic and public contexts. And she's a member of Forum Dvorah, Women in Foreign Policy and National Security. Thank you so much, Dr. Hendelman-Baavur, for joining us. I'm going to mute myself and listen with great interest to your wonderful talk. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and thank you all for being here today. I want to begin by expressing my sincere thanks to the UCLA Nazarian Center for Israel Studies, the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University, and the UCLA Center for Middle East Development for organizing this timely conversation. A special thank you to our moderator, Professor Steve Zipperstein, Professor Mark Kligman, and also to Mara, to Gage, for their thoughtful and tireless coordination behind the scenes. I'm also grateful to Professor Meir Litvak for his ongoing intellectual partnership and support. And if I've overlooked anyone, please accept my apology and my thanks. Events like this are always a collective effort. As someone who has spent much of her academic life studying modern Iran with a focus on youth, gender, media, and cultural politics, I've come to see digital life not just as a site of expression, but as a site of confrontation, creativity, and at times, quiet courage. When we think about Iran and Israel, what often comes to mind are security threats, cyber attacks, and deep-seated hostility. But today, I'd like us to look elsewhere, at the screen the feed, the DM. Because on platforms like Instagram, Telegram, and X, young people are doing more than just consuming content. They are organizing, surveilling, resisting, filtering, and sometimes reaching across one of the most heavily policed divides in the modern Middle East. So the question I'll explore today is this: can social media serve as a bridge between historical rivals, or is it simply another front in a digital war of attrition? To answer that, we need first to understand who the users are. And we begin with the complex and often misunderstood world of Iranian youth. We often hear sweeping generalizations, the Iranian people, the youth rising up, as if they are a unified political force. But Iranian youth, like youth anywhere, are not a monolith. They are fragmented by class, gender, religion, geography, ideology, and by how much exposure they have to the world beyond Iran's borders. They live within a society shaped by profound internal contradictions. Since the 1979 revolution, Iran has undergone major demographic shifts. In 1976, its population was around 33 million. Today, it's over 90 million. That growth was once driven by revolutionary ideals, encouraging large families. But in recent decades, Iran has experienced one of the most steepest fertility declines in the world, and the current rate, just 1.6 children per woman, is now below replacement level. Iran's population is aging, but not yet old. The largest age group today is 35 to 44, meaning many politically active young adults were children in the 1990s and early 2000s. They came of age under sanctions, censorship, economic instability, and protest movements. The Green Movement in 2009, the Fuel Protest in 2019, and the Masa Amini's uprising in 1922, to name the most prominent among the uprisings in the past 20 years. Despite the state's control, Iranian youth are among the most educated and digitally fluent in the region. Iran has a strong university system, a vibrant tech culture, and a widespread smartphone use. Apps like Instagram, Telegram, and WhatsApp are popular, even when filtered or banned. So despite the state's control, Iranian youth are among the most educated, and apps like Instagram and Telegram are popular even when they are filtered or banned. Being young in Iran does not necessarily mean being liberal, pro-Western, or anti-regime. Some seek democratic reform, others call for Islamic justice, some are disillusioned, others are deeply ideological, and this we can say about both sides of the spectrum. The lives of Iranian youth are shaped by real pressure. There is unemployment, inflation, gender-based restrictions, mandatory conscription, and surveillance. And yet they are also driven by real aspirations for education, for dignity, for connection, and for happiness. Understanding the complexity of the lives of Iranian youth is essential, because when we later look at digital behavior, who shares a meme, joins a Telegram group, posts an image without hijab, we need to remember that these are not just gestures. They are situated acts shaped by history, by pride, by pressure, and by political ambiguity. If Iranian youth are shaped by repression and risk, Israeli youth are shaped by contradiction and intensity. Israel is a small country with a dynamic, hyper-connected public sphere, but one where divisions run deep, ethnic, religious, ideological, and increasingly generational. More than 40% of Israel's population is under 25. These young people grow up with access to global internet, quality education, and a booming tech sector, but also within a society that is highly militarized, politically fractured, and often in crisis. A secular teenager in Tel Aviv may inhabit a completely different political universe than a settler in the West Bank, and ultra-conservative students in Bnei Brak, or an Arab citizen in Al-Fahim. Yet they all scroll the same platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Telegram, YouTube. Unlike their Iranian counterparts, Israeli youth have access to open internet and legal protection for free speech. But that freedom doesn't shield them from backlash. Expression is often policed by social pressure, digital mobs, and ideological echo chambers. Since the October 7th attacks, these divisions have only deepened. Some young Israelis have become more nationalist, others more outspokenly critical. Many are emotionally exhausted. As in Iran, not all youth are political in the same way in Israel. Some oppose the occupation, some refused military service, others joined the army, go into tech, or build settler movements, and many try to opt out entirely. What connects them is that they live publicly and digitally, negotiating identity, risk, and belonging on the same platforms where memes, trauma, and ideology collide. So when a young Israeli follows a young Iranian on Instagram or vice versa, that act carries weight. It isn't just digital curiosity. It's a breach of inherited fear. But what happens next? How that gesture is interpreted is often misunderstood. Especially in the West, there is a tendency to see all Iranian dissent as a cry for liberal democracy. But desire for change is not always desire for the West. Many Iranian youths criticize the regime from religious, nationalist, or revolutionary perspectives. Some reject gender segregation, but still value Islamic identity. Others want economic justice without political upheaval. The slogans we see on the street or online often point to basic survival. Slogans such as water in Khuzestan, dignity in Tehran, and cultural rights in Kurdistan. And expression carries risk. That risk breeds nuance. A woman may wear a hijab by choice, but denounce police brutality. A man might quote both Khomeini and Che Guevara at the same time. What unites many isn't ideology, it's disillusionment in many cases, with hypocrisy and corruption. They want space, they want honesty, they want to breathe. Not all religious youth are loyalists. Some are deeply spiritual and critical of the state. Some follow clerics who have been silenced for dissent. So when we interpret a post, a like, a hashtag, we must resist translating it through our own lens. A post about freedom might mean civil rights. It might mean the Shah. It might mean the Mahdi. Iranian youth are building their own language of dissent, remixing tradition and rebellion, satire and faith. It's not always clear, but it's alive. And just as we must resist simplification in Iran, we must resist in how we see Israeli youth as well. There is a tendency, especially abroad, to assume that young Israelis are either politically disengaged, uniformly nationalist, or neatly absorbed into the world of army units and startups. But in reality, Israeli youth are deeply fragmented and increasingly polarized. A young Jewish Israeli might resist, raised in an Israeli Zionist school system, serve in a combat unit, and then move into the tech sector. But just as easily, they might join a protest movement, refuse military service, and become vocal critics of the state. A young Arab citizens of Israel might identify as a Palestinian, demand equal rights, and oppose both Israeli policy and the Iranian regime, while still engaging in online solidarity with Iranian protesters. Among ultra-Orthodox, the Haredi youth, digital exposure is growing despite rabbinical prohibitions. Some engage with broader debates, others double down on conservative or anti-Zionist views. Mizrahi youth may feel marginalized within Ashkenazi-dominated institutions. Ethiopian Israeli youth confront ongoing racism. Russian-speaking youth bring post-Soviet political legacies. And young settlers in the West Bank often grow up with a nationalist or messianic worldview. So there is no single Iranian youth and no single Israeli youth. And just like in Iran, digital life doesn't resolve these divisions. It often intensifies them. During the Mahsa Amini protests, for instance, some Israeli youth expressed solidarity with Iranian women. Others co-opted the moment to push nationalist or Islamophobic narratives. Social media is both a mirror and a megaphone. It reflects ideological rifts and deepens them. And yet, in the middle of this noise, there are quiet acts of bridge building, youth-led initiatives, encrypt chat rooms, shared playlist, and digital art projects. Some young Israelis are beginning to reject the language of threat, of eternal enemies. They are asking deeper questions about justice, about coexistence, about what it means to live in a hyper-connected region. These aren't mass movements, but they are signals that even in the shadow of ideology and surveillance, connection is still possible. By now, we have seen that Iranian youth are diverse, disillusioned, and digitally fluent. But what happens when that fluency turns into defiance? So I go back again to the example of the Mahsa Amini uprising in 2022, when we witnessed something extraordinary, a moment when grief, rage, and digital coordination collided. Iranian youth were at the center of it. These protests were not only physical, they were profoundly digital. And that digital resistance had deep roots. Back in 2006, Jared Cohen described Iranian youth culture as a form of a passive revolution, reclaiming everyday life through subtle defiance. In 2022, that became something more. Digitally amplified resistance. Young Iranians use Telegram, WhatsApp, Instagram, even Bluetooth file sharing tools to organize flash protests, circulate video of police brutality, share banned music, slogans, and street art, document human rights abuses in real time. The regime responded with force and blackouts. Internet access was throttled, cut off, censored. But youth adopted with VPNs, mesh networks, peer-to-peer apps. Every phone became a memory device, a witness. And resistance didn't stop at protest. It became cultural. Underground parties went on. Women walked unveiled in defiance in the streets. Artists created clandestine murals. Students held silent sit-ins. Even when mass protests became too dangerous, the cultural protest endured. Hashtags like Masa Amini and Zan Zindagi Azadi traveled across the Persian internet and beyond. Thousands were arrested, dozens were killed, and yet the imagery persisted. The slogans spread, the fear cracked. What we witnessed was not the collapse of a regime, but something maybe more profound, the collapse of fear. These young Iranians know the state can jail them, censor them, even kill them, but they also know something else. The state can no longer fully control their imagination, their identity, or their voice. The Islamic Republic was founded on the fusion of religious and political authority. Clerics weren't just spiritual leaders, they were power brokers. For decades, this fusion granted the regime not just legitimacy, but it was their moral capital. But in recent years, the moral capital has eroded, even within the clergy itself. For Iranian youth, especially those raised with faith, this erosion matters. It signals that Islam and authoritarianism are not the same. One example is Hassan Ghamiri, known as the Telegram cleric. He gained a massive following by preaching mercy and personal spirituality over fear and dogma. In 2019, he was banned from preaching and disrobed. His crime was undermining the prestige of the clergy. To many youth in Iran, this only confirmed his credibility. Then there is Said Mahdi Sadr al-Sadati, who used Instagram to expose clerical excess, luxury weddings, elite corruption, and environmental mismanagement. He too was punished and forced to remove his clerical robe. And perhaps most dramatically, Muhammad Taqi Akbar-Nejad, in 2024, on the anniversary of the revolution, he publicly declared that the revolution now symbolized its opposite, not liberty, but its denial. Days later, he was arrested. These clerics are not marginal. Their dissent is symbolic. They show young Iranians that faith can survive without obedience, that belief does not require silence. In a system that tried to control both the soul and the state, this is a rapture. For a generation raised on repression and doubt, these descending clerics offer something rare, religious courage without political permission. They are not saviors, but they open a space for doubt, for sincerity, for meaning beyond surveillance. So far we've seen how Iranian and Israeli youth live under different regimes, but face parallel contradictions. And beneath all the ideology, something else is happening, a quiet digital contact. It's not diplomacy, it's not official, it's a meme, a mural, a message. An imaginary bridge built out of pixels and playlists. These unofficial connections take many forms. In 2008, the Iranian street artist Elon collaborated remotely with two Israeli artists, Inspire and Poe, to create the mirrored mural series titled Evolution of Violence. Briefly, the same artwork appeared in Tehran and in Tel Aviv. In 2012, Israeli designer Ronnie Edry launched the viral campaign Israel Loves Iran with a simple message: Iranians, we will never bomb your country. We love you. Thousands of Iranians at personal risk replied, we love you too. In Shiraz, the same year, we saw a graffiti calling no to war. And around the same time, students at the University of Haifa created Tel, a platform for anonymous, apolitical messages between young people in Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Tehran. It wasn't big, but it made contact. Music also traveled. Iranian Israeli pop singer Rita released an album in Persian called Shadmaneshhaye Rita, All My Joys, Asmachot Sheli. Despite being banned in Iran, it was widely downloaded. Another artist, Hezi Faniyan, recorded Salam, specifically as a gesture of peace between the nations, reaching out to Iranian audiences through the universal language of music. And Infected Mushrooms, the Israeli psytrance duo, became an underground soundtrack for Tehran highway drivers. These sporadic examples aren't just cultural imports. They are quiet refusals of inherited enmity. Every message, every remix, every shared lyric is a risk and a refusal. In a region where even an eye contact can feel forbidden, these gestures whisper something else. They whisper, I see you, I hear you, you matter to me, even if I was told you never should. After the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022, protests erupted across Iran, but something unexpected happened far beyond its borders, in the streets of Israel. In cities like Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Nazareth, Haifa, Netanya, and Eilat, murals began to appear. These were not, and therefore cannot be viewed as isolated acts. They were public statements of recognition, appearing in a country that officially considers Iran the enemy, and yet Israeli walls seem to speak another language. We see you, we mourn you, your struggle matters. Perhaps the most striking example of this visual solidarity appeared at the Museum for Tolerance in Jerusalem. The mural was titled Esters of the World Rise Up. It featured two women as modern-day Esters, Mahsa Amini and Shirel Haimpour, an Israeli soldier of Iranian descent killed on October 7th. Verses from the book of Jeremiah linking ancient Elam, Iran, with Jerusalem, inscribed the mural with theological testimony. Here was a visual declaration that transcended politics. Two women from enemy nations bound by shared humanity in the face of violence. Shirel Haimpour death ripped through Iranian communities worldwide. From LA to London, at her funeral, her grandfather sang first a traditional Jewish love song, then a Persian wedding melody for a granddaughter who would never stand beneath a wedding canopy. In that moment, perhaps we witnessed the entire story. Not treaties or hashtags, but a grandfather's voice bridging two languages, two cultures, in a single expression of loss. These human connections, forged through art, sustained through grief, would soon face their greatest test. The Hamas attack on October 7th didn't just change the battlefield. These attacks shook the very foundations of digital solidarity between Iranians and Israelis. On Iranian platforms, reactions varied. Some echoed the regime's celebration. Others responded with grief, unease, or cautious solidarity with Israeli civilians. The divide was clear. For many in the diaspora, especially Iranian Jews, secular liberals, and exile activists, the regime's embrace of Hamas only deepened their alienation from its ideological vision. Inside Iran, youth who had once expressed quiet solidarity with Israelis found themselves retreating. Some feared supporting a state now bombing Gaza. Others feared being seen as sympathizing with Hamas, and many simply logged off. The war revealed a difficult truth. Solidarity has limits, especially when bodies fall. And the Islamic Republic seized the moment. It amplified anti-Zionist messaging, clamped down on dissent, and painted empathy for Israeli victims as treason. For youth who had once reached out across digital divides, this was a rapture. Some connections broke, others hardened. But even then, quiet gestures remained. Israeli users posting peace messages in Persian, Iranians mourning all civilian deaths, a few quietly insisting that they didn't support either state, but still believed in people. The direct military confrontation between Iran and Israel in April and October 2024 tested these connections further. Iranian reactions varied significantly. Some rejoiced at the attacks, while others feared retaliation. Once minimal damage was verified, a wave of humor emerged on social media, with many young Iranians mocking their regime's military capabilities. Others criticized the Iranian government's investments in regional conflicts, echoing the slogan, "No Gaza, no Lebanon, my life for Iran." In Israel, responses were equally fragmented. The attacks exposed the same divisions we've been tracking throughout this presentation, reinforcing that neither Iranian nor Israeli youth speak with a single voice, even in moments of direct military confrontation. Even during state repression and ideological pressure, some Iranians continue to defy official script, not with essays, but with acts, small, visual, and highly dangerous. Images emerge from Tehran and beyond of youth posing with Israeli flags, students stepping around the painted Israeli and American flags instead of stepping them, graffiti and signs saying our enemy is right here, also circulated. These acts are subtle but risky in a country where a social media like can lead to arrest. A photo of an Iranian young person with an Israeli flag is a radical act, not pro-Zionism, anti-authoritarian defiance, a refusal of state-imposed binaries. For some youth, Israel is no longer the enemy. Repression is. Refusing to step on a flag, a performative act long required by the regime, is a way of saying, we will not perform your hatred. These are not mass movements, but they are potent signals that in a system built on ritualized obedience, young people are rewriting the script, sometimes with nothing but a can of paint, a camera, and the courage to stand still. In diaspora too, post-October 7th protests took on new tones. Across cities in North America and Europe, Iranian demonstrators carried the imperial lion and sun flag next to the Israeli flag, rejecting both Hamas and the Islamic Republic's worldviews. These displays were not exclusive to monarchists, but monarchist symbolism was often present. The message, Iran and Israel share an enemy in the Islamic Republic. In digital spaces, this stance was amplified by voices like Elika Leban, an Iranian-American attorney who became a lightning rod after October 7th. She argued that Western progressives were inadvertently serving the Islamic Republic by downplaying Hamas, a message that hit home for many Iranian exiles who felt the world ignored their suffering. But her black and white framing sparked fierce pushback. Progressive Iranians accused her of using their struggle as a weapon to silence Palestinian voices. And these weren't just polite disagreements. They exploded across Telegram groups, Instagram lives, and Twitter storms. What October 7th revealed was stark. The Iranian diaspora isn't united, not even close. Opposition to the regime splinters along ideological, generational, and strategic fault lines. The very idea of solidarity, so carefully built through shared music and murals, suddenly became a battlefield itself. We've traced how digital platforms can bridge historical enemies, how they create windows for empathy and challenge state narratives. But these same platforms also divide, manipulate, and surveil. The line between authentic connection and performance, between protest and provocation, is never simple. And here is where our analysis takes a different turn. And these fragile moments of human connections we've been exploring represent only one dimension of digital interaction. Beneath them operates another layer, states systematically exploiting the very platforms that individuals use for connection. These spaces don't merely host solidarity, they host strategic operations. This shift manifested dramatically after October 7th. According to Microsoft's 2024 Threat Intelligence Report, Iran redirected nearly half of its observed cyber operations towards Israel, up from just 10% previously. This 400% increase in targeting came with qualitative changes. Attacks became more destructive and were increasingly paired with influence operations, fake activist accounts, coordinated disinformation campaigns, and strategic impersonations. The dynamic operates bidirectionally. While never officially acknowledged, several significant cyber attacks on Iranian infrastructure, including steel production facilities, gas stations, and railway systems, have been attributed by independent analysis to Israeli-linked actors. And these operations represent what scholars term calibrated digital deterrence. Since 2023, Israeli security services have documented a marked increase in Iranian intelligence operations conducted through social media platforms. The methodology follows a consistent pattern. Iranian operatives approach Israeli citizens online, presenting themselves as journalists, human rights activists, or romantic interests. They built trust gradually through shared values and personal engagement, and eventually operational requests emerge, like photographing sensitive locations, distributing materials, or gathering intelligence on specific individuals, etc. In 2024 alone, Israeli authorities arrested at least 24 citizens for cooperation with Iranian handlers, some wittingly, others unwittingly, just managed to fall into this trap. For digital natives who view these platforms as spaces of authentic expression, this creates profound paradox. The very language of solidarity and resistance can be weaponized against them. Platforms designed for connection become vehicles of exploitation. Our analysis reveals that these are not mutually exclusive possibilities. Digital platforms function as hybrid spaces where authentic human connection and state exploitations operate simultaneously, where grassroots solidarity exists alongside systematic surveillance. So if I need to answer my earlier questions, can social media serve as a bridge between historical rivals, or does it constitute another front in their conflict? So we can say that the question is yes to both. Despite the comprehensive documentations of risk, surveillance networks and infiltration attempts, coordination manipulations, young people in both society persist in seeking connections across the divide. In refusing inherited narratives of enmity, these digital natives aren't merely using social media, they are transforming it into a site of political rehearsal. Through each cross-border interaction, each moment of recognition, each shared cultural artifact, they incrementally rewrite the parameters of regional politics. The implication extends beyond individual gestures. These views are crafting new political grammars, one that acknowledges state power while refusing its totalizing claims, that recognize danger while insisting on human connections, that navigate surveillance while maintaining agency. One post, one risk, one act of digital defiance at a time. And I will stop here, and I would like to thank you for your patience.
That was truly remarkable. Congratulations on your superb research. This is such an important topic. And also for making clear that the complexities and the nuances here render us really unable to make firm conclusions one way or the other. But I have a question for you, and I would encourage anyone in the audience who has a question to please type it in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to come to it in the 10 minutes that we have left. But here's my question, Liora. There are a lot of academic studies about the Arab Spring and the role that social media played in Tahrir Square in 2011. Especially interesting are academic studies that talk about the convergence of the online and offline spaces, particularly the role of Egyptian expats acting online and communicating with those on the ground offline in Tahrir Square, and the very important role played by Wael Ghonim, his Facebook page, and so forth. Lots of interesting academic studies, the role of women. My question is simple. Putting aside the bridge building between Iranians and Israelis in these very, very interesting spaces online, might we be looking at the potential for a Persian Spring, given the incredible sophistication and courage of some in Iran who are using social media as a way to express their frustration with the regime?
Well, I would say that Iranians even predated the Arab Spring. If we go back, we can see that there were demonstrations and huge uprisings in 1999, in 2006, and in 2009, of course. And perhaps the closest to the Arab Spring is 2009. Following the post-election of the presidential elections of Ahmadinejad. And I remember back then, the headlines in many news outlets was the Iranian revolution is like happening again. And I remember going over in chat rooms and in other, it was Twitter at the time. The 2009 demonstrations in Iran were actually also called the Twitter revolution, because Twitter was actually unknown at the time, and the Iranian uprising actually made it widespread, because everything was going through there. And I remember in 2011, when they saw what is going on in the Arab world, they were perplexing how it didn't work in Iran, because they even started it earlier on. The Iranians are highly tech savvy, and they started working with online media. It used to be blogs, and later on it developed throughout as the internet itself developed, and newer apps were getting into to use, and we can see them use it all the time. and extensively. But again, the question is, to what end? Is it a regime change, or maybe smaller targeted objectives? And we see these objectives. For example, in 2006, we had 1 million signatures that women gathered in order to support discrimination of women by law. We had the campaign to allow women to enter stadiums in Iran. There was a Stop Stoning campaign in Iran. So the question is, what are the objectives? And many times we can see small, perhaps adjustment or dialogue with the regime. But one of the problems is that each time that the regime makes one step forward in order to alleviate the pressure from internet restrictions, for example, it doesn't take long that few months later or a year later, they take two steps backward. So it's like, we will say, a dynamic negotiation, which allows the regime not to advance too much, while projecting an atmosphere as if it does negotiate or open for dialogue on certain aspects. We also heard that following Masa Amini in 2022, they will eliminate police brutality in the streets and the squads that actually arrest women for violations of dress code. But then they moved it to a different level, while placing surveillance camera and all sorts of other surveillance activities to follow women's violations when it comes to the public sphere. So again, we see that there were attempts, and they are using the internet. They have minor, we will say, accomplishments, but it depends where one wants to take it.
Okay, thank you for that. We do have time for one more question from the audience. Let me read it to you. You mentioned that young Iranians express disillusionment over corruption and hypocrisy. Do young Israelis connect with them over the same disillusionment about their own country, including the hypocrisy of religious leaders in Israel, negating Jewish values, and political and religious leaders being corrupt? And we've got about 4 minutes if you can answer that
Okay,
question.
so I would say I did not see a dialogue on these specific issues, because I think that when it comes to such issues, it's very domestic, because the examples and the knowledge about the specifics of the people and the personalities and each and everyone's, I don't know, house, or how many times this or that person travels abroad and what he buys and where he lives are very, very country specific. So generally, I would say that these issues, in their broadest sense, occupies the public discourse, but in each country, it gathers its own specific details when it comes to specific people and, of course, in the government.
Okay, thank you so much. I am about to turn my camera and my sound off and hand back to Professor Kligman, but I want to thank you. This was an incredible, very, very interesting presentation that you gave us. Lots to think about. We look forward to seeing your book about the Pahlavi royal family and to reading more of your scholarship. With that, I want to thank the audience, and I'll hand back to Professor Mark Kligman for closing remarks.
Thank you again, Liora Hendelman-Baavur. So enlightening to hear the nuances of what lived experiences are and things I think we certainly didn't know. And thanks again to Steve Zipperstein for moderating. We just want to let everyone know that the next presentation in our three-part series with Tel Aviv University's Alliance for Iranian Studies will be on Thursday, May 29th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time with Roz Zimt, and the UCLA moderator will be Dalia Dasake. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you at our future presentations. Thank you.